Welcome back to part 2, Into the Breach on Unfair, with the Steel Judoka, or maybe Judoka. I promised an interesting run, and you're going to start seeing it get more interesting. We've got the Judo mech with the shield tank fresh out the kitchen, Isaac in the gravity mech, and we've got the building's immune upgrade on the siege mech. So now I'm considering my options. We've got an awful archive ahead of us, with the Spider Leader, exploding scions. It's bad news. Pinnacle is looking interesting, and Detritus has the Armored Scion, Blobbers. It's got the Gastropod, which is somewhat helpful. But I see that Pinnacle also has Gastropods and Beetles. And Beetles are similar to Fireflies and Gastropods in that they are conducive to helping Steel Judoka do its thing of encouraging the enemy attacking each other. So I pick Pinnacle. I figure that the bonus from the Vec Hormones passive kind of offsets the effect of the Soldier Scion, giving my enemies +1 HP. So I figured this was probably my best bet. And I'm considering my options. I've only got 2 choices for my first mission. Here at the Sub-Zero range, I'm scrutinizing the enemies. You can see them all on the ice. And that mission type will not spawn new enemies. And then I've got a Defend the Robot Factories, which can be a tough mission. So I think I like to do this one first on the off chance that I can get a time pod drop early to help me prepare for the harder mission ahead. What I also thought interesting, and part of the reason I chose this mission, is you can see that beetle in the corner? It's stuck. It literally will not be able to move from that position. And I thought that was just kind of interesting. And look at that. We do get the time pod drop. So I will be as strong as I can be, going into this island, tackling Pinnacle. I think part of the other reason I chose Pinnacle was I've got the shield tank, and there are certain mission objectives here that, benefit from defending friendly units. Also, there's sometimes, missions that might get you frozen. So shielding my own mechs would, protect them from getting frozen, I thought. So we can see me deploying the shield tank. It gives the Judo mech an interesting option on the first round if it can't use its throw. And without any upgrades, the shield tank is just a 1 HP ground unit that can shield adjacent targets, including the grid. So, unlike some of the other deployable tanks, it gives you an action advantage. You've got an extra friendly unit, but it is an only defensive action that you can take. So, yes, I get a bonus friendly action, but because it is primarily defensive in nature, it is not quite as universally powerful as some of the other tanks maybe are. And that's why I thought it was going to be fun to showcase the shield tank. Some people consider it the most fair of the deployable tanks. And, I think that's a valid opinion to have. But it's fun. We'll get to see, how useful it is over the course of this run. And you can see that this mission, I haven't even really been talking about my strategy here because this is a very easy mission type. The enemies only freeze 2 at a time, so you're able to maintain an action advantage, and I've been able to kind of use this alpha beetle to destroy the enemies for me. And in the meantime, I've just been using the shield tank to, shore up the defenses on the grid so that I have even less to worry about. And we don't have to worry about that other beetle over there. It's stuck. Poor guy. So this is just a real easy first mission to get out of the way on Pinnacle. I was able to get that time pod, so I'm thinking that I will be in good shape to tackle the rest of the island. But buckle up, because even if this mission was pretty short, I believe that this run took me a while. There were definitely some stumpers, some careful considerations that needed to be done. But that's a real quick and easy first mission out of the way, less than 5 minutes in. And we will see where the length bloat begins to kick in. I get Chen wrong with Opener from the time pod, and that's a nice surprise. I figure a pilot with opener would be useful on the siege mech. It's kind of our main distributor of damage. And opener will also give that siege mech more maneuverability on the first round. And Chen's innate ability is really neat. She gets to do a little one-move sidestep after her attack is over. So it's like kind of discount Archimedes. It doesn't take a core, but it can still be useful. And I do a little bit of pilot shuffling. I swap out my generic pilot with technician. I figured that would help us for survivability instead of having to rely on the weird speed boost from Masochist. And then I have an extra power core to spend, and I decide to invest it in the shield tank. You can give the shield tanks more health to help them in like body blocking and spawn blocking, or you can give them a ranged projectile so that they can shield things that are not adjacent to themselves. And I figure without the health upgrade, the projectile will let the shield tank kind of stay in the back, stay out of danger, and just help me shore up defenses, so I elect to do the projectile upgrade. And we are on to defend the robot factories. This can be a troublesome mission. We've got 2 beetles, a moth, a scorpion, and a gastropod. The scorpion will be annoying, the moth will be annoying. The other 3 Vec are potential weapons that I want to try and use. I'm going to deploy my mechs away from the scorpion, and I figured the scorpion is probably going to attack the robot factory, so I'm positioning the judo mech in such a way that I can maybe get it to body block something and then deploy the tank, with the siege mech having to do the kind of the flex problem solving. So my predictions are a little bit off, but we have some interesting advantages here. Because the robot factory is blocking the beetle's attack, and the beetle will go before the gastropod in initiative order. So when the beetle charges the robot, it'll stop and will body block the gastropod's attack. So I actually only have to worry about the scorpion on this turn. I'm not sure if I immediately recognize this because, you know, it's a little bit tough to see on first blush. The weird little Rube Goldberg machine that has been set up here. I elect to, I think, just get some damage on the scorpion and light it on fire. No, I guess it's not lit on fire. But I've definitely got it within, you know, killing range. I can do even more chip damage. And then it will be time to deploy my little tank friend. I think I could have actually positioned the judo mech behind the moth and then deployed the tank. And then the moth would have killed itself on the recoil as it moves backwards. But it's okay. Not worth using a temple or reset, certainly. And just as I described, the enemy is kind of getting in each other's way. And the shield mech lets us safely protect the grid from that scorpion. So we are on to a 5v4 on the second turn. And we have 4 threats to the grid. But again, I'm lucky in the way the robot factories deploy the robots. The Alpha Beetle has once again been blocked. So I just have to worry about the 2 moths and the gastropod. And I see 3 targets. Oh, I guess that would push into the grid. But still, the siege mech can get 2 kills. Nice and easy. And then I think I elect to get the gastropod killed by its pal, doing that classic Steel Judoka friendly fire action. And then we can just get the judo mech to move that moth out of the way, and I have a spare action that I can use to defend the grid. And I think the best option would be to shield one of the robot factories, as they are the mission objective to defend. pretty painless. But we are getting a robot activated this turn, but it's okay. They've only got 1 HP. Not too worrisome. And on this turn, we are at a 4v4. You can see that our action advantage, has a nice sort of multiplying effect that happens when you've got the friendly deployable tanks at your disposal. Not quite as crazy as having a pilot with conservative. We can kill that robot, and we don't have to worry about the beetle because the robot factory has been shielded. So now we've only got 1 threat to the grid left to worry about, which we can solve with the gravity mech and light that moth on fire. And that leaves the judo mech and the shield tank left. We'll just get a spawn block in and get a little extra grid shielding going. And we are on to the final turn, which will be I think again, a 4v4. As we will get a new spawn and a robot activating. But this mission went pretty smoothly. It's always a little bit I'm always a little bit nervous when I'm doing Protect the Robot Factories. Sometimes you can get kind of overwhelmed with the additional robots that are added. So we end this one with 3 threats to the grid. So that's the robot out of the way. The moth has also been pushed out of harm's way. So now we just have to worry about this beetle. And we can do some Steel Judoka here. Get an extra enemy kill. Squeeze out some good XP. And then we just gotta move everyone else out of the way of that gastropod's attack. I don't think there's anything we can really do about it, but that's okay. So far, Pinnacle has been kind. This was our mandatory mission. And it's always good when that mission is painless. That means we will have options available for us for the remainder of the island. And you'd like to have choices. You can make informed strategic decisions on mission selection. And you can scrutinize maps and try to pick, advantageous maps. I honestly think even at some points, the map itself is more important than the mission objective. You've got to develop a feel for it. So I've got cryo mines on that mission, and we've got boom bots on this mission. Now, this map is more favorable, but the boom bots mission is pretty risky. I do have the ability to shield buildings, though, with the shield tank, so I think that I was feeling the Boombots mission more than the other one. So, I often don't pick Boombots if I don't have to, but I think I was feeling kind of spicy here. And I will kind of regret this decision, as we will see shortly. So we finally see the Soldier Scion. I guess we saw it in the first mission, but now it's here with more active enemies. 2 moths, 2 alpha beetles, and then the Boombots themselves with their annoying death throws. You can see on deployment, I'm trying to set up a bait for the artillery Boombot. It likes to attack 3 tiles in a row. But my bait is unsuccessful. Instead, it elects to target the grid, which is irritating. I think the Boombots like to place themselves next to grid buildings or your mechs with the intent of, inflicting damage with their death throws. Which is a bummer. I am somewhat lucky in that 2 of the Vec decide to attack the frozen Boombots, so I won't have to waste any actions freeing them myself. However, we have 4 threats to the grid, and our actions are going to be pretty limited here. we can at least defend the defense lab. But we see that in deploying the shield tank, I lost I didn't have 4 actions this turn, I only had 3. So I didn't have the spare actions to address that moth, and I have to take a very costly 2 grid health. But at least I got some of the boom bots out of the way, and I managed to defend the defense lab. That was my reasoning anyway. And once again, we've got an unlucky 5 threats to the grid and only 4 actions available to me. We've got the 2 boombots attacking, the moths attacking, and the alpha beetle attacking. And I see a weird little thing I can do, because what I want to do is try to block the alpha beetle's attack with one of the boombots. I've got some options, but my best option is the gravity mech. So I can kind of do a 2-for-1, but it's not quite a 2-for-1 because I can't body block the laser attack from the robot. So I do have to spend one of my actions to shield the defense lab. And then I can finish off that boombot. We won't have any more boombots to worry about, which is nice. And thanks to Technician, the Judo Mech will not die, as it's going to be taking bump damage, and then the death throws will also be doing damage. So the Judo Mech will be just alive. But once again, I can't do anything about both of the moths. I have to pick one. And I decide to leave the alpha moth alone because it's going to block a spawn when it moves backwards. So we've lost 3 grid health already. This has been a costly mission. But thank you, Technician. So finally, on the next turn, we will be looking at a 3v4. This will be more manageable, and I'm hoping that I will not have to worry about any further grid damage. We can finish off that moth with fire damage. But we've got to do something about the beetle. And what we can do is Steel Judoka it. Thanks to it going first on initiative, we can finish off that rooting, tooting moth. And then the shield tank itself is a little bit in a weird position, and I decide the best thing to do is just keep that defense lab defended, since we've got a potential perfect island reward riding on its safety. And we will end this mission with a 3v4. And we get 2 more of those awful moths. Moths are bad news. But we are somewhat lucky in that the enemy decides to just attack my mechs. All I have to do here is move my mechs out of the way, and then I could just proceed to the next turn. And indeed, the beetle would just kill itself. It's just going to charge straight into the water. But I decide to instead kill a moth with the beetle. Because, you know, I have a horrible oath of blood vengeance against all moth kind. So, a bit of a Pyrrhic victory. I hope I pronounced that right. We lost 3 grid health, but we did get a power core out of it. The question is, where am I going to invest it? I think I want to just max out the shield tank. So I've got my last mission before the boss fight, and that one is block Vex spawning, and I don't like the look of that because there's going to be 6 Vec on the first turn, and many of them will probably get frozen on the cryo mines, and I won't be able to block any spawns until I start actually killing Vec, so I didn't like my chances there. This map seed is pretty favorable. The enemy side of the board is very constrained and full of mountains. So I do indeed upgrade the shield tank's health. And I pick this mission even though it doesn't provide me with any additional grid health. So I'm going to be, it'll be a risk going into my final mission here on Pinnacle. I believe this mission is one of the ones where I really started to agonize over decision-making, and I will try to speed some of that up to save us some time. Because the problem with this mission is I have to kill 6 or fewer enemies. Normally that's not too big of a deal for the Steel Judoka, as they don't do a lot of damage, but we have the robots on the field, and they count against the enemy kills. So with only 1 HP each, I am probably going to quickly hit half of my kill limit with just the robots being around. So I'm a little bit worried here. I have to be very careful with my deployment. I'm trying to bait the robots' attacks by putting my mechs in a row, and I am successful in doing so. Both the laser one and the artillery robot cannot resist, so I can ignore them on this turn. And the other enemies are stuck on their side of the board for now, although the beetle is coming in quickly. And if possible, I don't want to do too much damage to the enemy, because, again, we are constrained with our kill 6 or fewer mission objective. But that is where the advantage of the shield tank comes in. The shield tank can only take defensive actions, so it is incapable of doing harm to my foes. So I'm hoping that this will be an advantage that will give us the edge, as I can, I can defend against that alpha beetle. Now I have a tough decision to make, which is if I kill nothing on this turn, the Scorpion will free that frozen robot, and then we're getting one more spawn in. So there will be 7 enemies on the board. Granted, I have, it would be a 7v4, but that's still just a nasty action advantage to deal with. So if I can afford to kind of wean my damage, I can at least try to keep the enemy numbers, around 6. 6v4, I figure I'll have enough options to, find some solves. But I spend a lot of time here considering my options. Both what to do with the gravity mech and the siege mech. I had half a mind to not fire the siege mech at all and just maintain the boosted status, so that I could deliver 2 damage, somewhere more decisive later on. I finally elect to free the frozen robot with the gravity mech. That way the Scorpion will kill it for us, and at least keep our enemy numbers down to minimum 6v4. But I'm going to speed things up here as I consider all of my angles with the siege mech. I spend a lot of time looking at all the different, alternate combinations I could do to attack with the siege mech. Who can I soften up? Who can I afford to kill? Etc., etc. I think finally I just settle on passing as we return to normal time. So this turn is going to be a 6v4. But we get the Scion, which is nice. So it's really more like a 5v4, and the Scion is sort of inadvertently helping us. By providing the Vec with +1 HP, they are slightly less likely to die. So I really don't want to kill the Scion if I could at all afford it. I can body block with the Judo mech, and then I can throw that Scorpion, so I can get basically a 2-for-1 solve with the Judo mech. And that just means I have to deal with the artillery robot, the laser robot, and the alpha beetle. We can kill that robot with the gravity mech. And now we've only got 2 problems left, and 2 actions left. And lucky me, I think I can get the shield tank to once again wrangle the alpha beetle. I just gotta get an angle on the laser robot with Chen. And we are very thankful to have the building's immune upgrade. So that was a pretty painless turn. It just took me some... I guess it was more the first turn that took me a lot of time. The Judo Mech is lit on fire, but the pilot has technician, so we don't have to worry too much about it. And we are at a 3v4 with 2 new spawns on the way for the final turn. I believe with, indeed I'm at 3 of 6 kills allowed, as I imagined the robots were just going to go. I decided to kill that scorpion, just so we don't have to worry about any further webbing issues. And then we can wrangle the beetles, giving the gravity mech basically a free action. Unfortunately, we can't really do any spawn blocking or anything. Our positioning is a little suspect on this mission. The enemy just kind of pushed us into the back of our own side of the board. But, that's kind of what happens with beetles. If you let them, they will charge clear across the board. I am kind of concerned with positioning here at the end of our turn. I want to try and see if I can't bait the beetles to attack my mechs. That will afford me, I think, some more options. So our final turn, we get a scorpion and a moth. A little bit bad, a little bit unlucky positioning. If the scorpion had spawned on the far side of the board, it would not have been able to get into reach. But we are also somewhat lucky in that the moth and the beetle are attacking my mechs, so we just have to worry about the scorpion, and we have to worry about the alpha beetle. And the solve here is a little bit interesting, in that thanks to the shield mech, I can do some body blocking, which is cool. I can block the alpha beetle's charge attack, the gravity mech will be fine, and it will move out of the way from the beetle's push, such that they won't be killed by the moth's attack. So we are in the clear. No damage, and mission successful. This mission was a good example of sometimes, it is strategically advantageous to not take actions. Call it neutral Jin. I guess the gravity mech winds up taking a little bit of damage, but they can withstand a 1 HP hit. So now we are on to the boss fight. And this will be a challenge, as we are up against the Scion Abomination, which I don't think we have seen yet on this series. Like any Scion, it is incapable of doing anything by itself. It just provides buffs to the other Vec. And what a series of buffs it provides, as behooves a boss Scion. So all of the Vec will have +1 HP, they will heal 1 damage every turn, and they self-destruct on death. And I'm also very unhappy to see 3 alpha moths, and only 1 regular beetle. So our tools for doing Steel Judoka stuff is very limited. I'm going to have to see, I don't have a lot of damage on my own, so I really have to try and get the Vec to attack the Scion Abomination for us, while also desperately trying to keep the grid alive, as I really, really cannot afford to take very much damage here. So, as predicted, all 4 Vec attack the grid. I can at least get the nasty moth that is attacking the corporate tower solved with the gravity mech. Its attack will get cancelled, and it won't move backwards and do bump damage to the grid. So the question then becomes, what do I do with the siege mech and the judo mech? I don't think there's anything I can do to save the grid building that is being targeted by 2 moths. So I think I'm just going to have to sacrifice 1 grid health. But in getting the beetle knocked out of the way, we can at least get damage started on the Scion Abomination. And thanks to Chen's bonus move, we can get a spawn block in. So I have to give up 1 health, which is not ideal. But at least I can spend some time deploying the shield tank to buy us that little extra bit of action advantage. And I think what I do next is maybe a little bit of a misplay. I could have deployed the shield tank and then shielded a building that wasn't going to be destroyed. But I think I remember hearing somewhere that even at 0% grid defense, there is still some very tiny chance that the grid defense will hold. So, against my own better judgment, I elect to shield that building on the off chance that maybe, just maybe, it would survive the second hit. But spoilers, it does not. So I think I would have been better spent using that shield tank to shield some other part of the grid. So we've got at least a little bit of damage started on the Scion Abomination, but the moths continue to just be awful. We are fortunate in that only one of them decides to attack the judo mech. But we've got problems if we don't address the beetle and the moth. We are looking down the barrel of a game over. We have to address the more southern of the 2 moths. It's going to do a, irreparable 3 grid damage. So the siege mech, I think, is the only one that could even deal with that. So that move had to be committed. I think I elect to body block the beetle's attack and then get some chip damage on the Scion Abomination. I think that was a good call. I protect the grid and will also be blocking a spawn when the beetle pushes the gravity mech. The only downside is the gravity mech is going to be taking some serious damage. But the grid is safe. And I've got a spare action, which I believe I use to shield the ever-important corporate tower. So now we're on to the penultimate turn, and we are still at a 4v4 here. You can see all the various bits of chip damage I've been doing over the course of the mission just slowly fading away as the Scion's regen kicks in. If it wasn't for that, I would have been able to get one of these moths to kill, its friend. I can't quite get it done. Just 2 HP left on that abomination. And we have 2 moths threatening the grid. And the judo mech is in a real awkward position here. It cannot move the moth closest to it due to the intricacies of its vice grip weapon. But it must be addressed by hook or by crook. And we also have to be very careful with how we handle the moth in the upper corner of the map. I hate using 2 mech actions to solve 1 Vec problem, but that is kind of the position we are in here. I can pull that moth with the gravity mech, and then I can throw it with the judo mech, and just get it out of the way. As long as I can block that spawn, we're not going to be looking at any further enemy arrivals. And we can get that moth taken care of. My only the only downside of this turn is I am not able to do damage to the Scion Abomination. Which is a bummer. But at least we can get a moth out of the way. And we can block that spawn with the shield tank. And thanks to investing in the shield tank's HP, it can survive sitting on a Vex spawn for a little while. And I can also, thanks to the range upgrade, at least get some bonus defenses up on the grid. Hopefully buy me some breathing room. So our final turn here is a 3v4, and we have to kill the Abomination if at all possible. So it's our final turn. And we have a minor miracle. None of the Vec attack the grid. And that leaves me free to try and get the Scion killed. And I can, thanks to bump damage. Mission accomplished. And we don't even have to worry about that beetle, because we had the foresight to defend the corporate tower. I think if I would have maybe played around better with the positioning of my shield tank here, I might have been able to squeeze out a little bit of extra experience. Due to how the initiative order shook out, I could have actually gotten the beetle killed, but instead I just elected to block its attack with the shield tank. Just kind of, pointless. Not necessarily what I would call a huge misplay, but I could have maybe squeezed out a little bit more XP. Goodbye, shield tank. You were a good boy. So we take no further grid damage, fortunately, but we're down to 2 health. We're real low here, looking scary. But we get a perfect island reward. We get Storm Generator, which is no big deal, but then we get Ghana with Conservative. Ooh. The run just got very interesting. Conservative combined with a deployable tank is an extremely powerful force modifier. So I elect to take Ghana, and I immediately put them in the Judo Mech. And then the rest of the equipment available to me are not the greatest things in the world. Prime Spear is decent, but it's a little bit expensive to equip, and we are kind of thirsty for cores right now. I could have sold my 2 generic pilots to get a little bit of extra cash, but instead I elect to buy 2 power cores and then just top off the grid, keeping my bench of pilots around. I think part of my reasoning was, should the worst happen to one of my other pilots, we've got replacements waiting in the wings, and I can save them. They're sort of like banked experience, or banked reputation, in case, on a subsequent island I see something really choice, and I need that extra bit of buying power. So I'm pretty happy with my selection here. 2 power cores, I get the grid basically back to full strength, so I will be in a good position for the next island. And I've got some power cores that I can use to do some interesting things, like get Ghana's innate ability online, Preemptive Strike. It's a very interesting ability that I'm going to be showcasing on the next video. And then with the extra core, I could invest it in any number of places. perhaps even Invec Hormones to give us +1 extra friendly fire damage on the enemy. But I elect instead to invest in the Judo Mech further, because Ghana is going to be putting themselves in a lot of danger, and I wanted to give them some, insurance with extra HP. So join me next time, like and subscribe for part 3 of the Steel Judoka.